Hi, everyone. Welcome to Fix the Franchise Faultline. This podcast that pulls the curtain back on what really happens when the franchisor and the franchisee relationship starts to crack. I'm Linda, and I'm joined by Steve Barrett. Between us, we've led franchise businesses. We've had some amazing time, haven't we, Steve?
Yeah.
But we've also felt the strain when things started to fall apart and seeing how hard it is to put them back together. We're not here to criticize, but we are here to start to have the conversation that we believe that no one else is having. If you are a franchisor or a franchisee, I think you're going to like this. This one is actually for you. So, Steve, long time no speak. It's great to have you back. So, when did it all go wrong? In your opinion, what were the early signs that the relationship were off track? What have you experienced personally or seen that went wrong from both the franchisor and the franchisee side that you can share with us?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I guess quite a deep one.
Very deep,
Uh,
very close to our
yeah,
heart.
yeah. I think we all, it's almost like bringing the elephant into the room, isn't it? Which is quite exciting.
Nobody want to talk about. There is an
Um,
elephant. We don't want to talk about. We are going to talk about the elephant right now.
yeah, let's chat about that elephant. So I think the first point with it is these things don't happen overnight, do they? It's always a gradual process. It's almost like things are good at one point and then they slip. So I think from my experience, the signs of those fault lines were probably visible for 5 or 6 years before things went really wrong. There's some sort of system bits, things like, targeting models and how franchisees are paid that don't really align with what the franchisor is trying to achieve. But I think the main thing in reality, it's the relational stuff. So it's when people stop listening to each other, when people stop trusting each other, and then everything becomes a little bit of a battle and a bun fight. So things that could be quite easily resolved because people come at them from a position of distrust. It makes it harder to actually move forward on anything. So decision making slows down, the situation gets worse, and then often what happens, rather than working together, more controls get put in place, and that relationship just slowly fractures until it collapses.
Just to continue with our conversation between the franchisor and the franchisee relationship, what's the power of experiencing a relationship that goes wrong?
Yeah, I guess it's painful at the time, but it's almost like having that power of hindsight. So I think if you've been somewhere and you've seen it when things aren't at the best and when things start to go wrong, and then when things eventually do go wrong, you're really well equipped and you learn a lot from that. So I think what it enables me to do is, if I'm ever spotting any of those signs in another business again, it's pretty easy to call it out for what it is and be able to tell that powerful story of where things can lead if it goes unchecked. So I think that's probably the main part for me. So it's almost like it enables you to become preventative and really sort of people first on it as well. And yeah, keep focused on that relationship.
Excellent.
I guess sort of a question for you on that. I mean, obviously you led through some pretty challenging dynamics during your time in franchise. So, what did you take away from it?
Oh, dear me. I feel that, it's great when you have a good time. But you actually learn so much more when something goes wrong. I probably didn't see it at the time. I probably didn't want it at the time. But when I look back now, I almost like see it as a gift that you can be so much more resilient and you can actually, if you put your right mindset to, you can do anything. But I guess what I've learned is because you kind of like you want a t-shirt, you've seen it, how you would do things slightly differently next time because we've seen how a good situation can turn really bad. So next question, Steve. You can franchise a brand, but can you really franchise a culture?
Yeah, look, I'm of the opinion you absolutely can. But I guess the starting point from this is probably to ask how many franchisors actually franchise their why? Or do they just franchise their brand, the image, their processes, etc.? And I think that's probably the case in a lot of incidents. And you just have to remember that culture, it really does scale through behaviors. So it needs to be modeled, it needs to be reinforced. People really need to feel it, not just on the front line, but all the way through the business. And I think what also happens is in not just in franchise, but corporate businesses as well, it's almost like real change is expected to be led by that middle manager level. And ultimately, it's always going to be a bit of a battle when you do that. It'll take longer. These things really need to be lived and breathed and come from the top and then just go all the way down to the front line. And it is that whole thing. If people are bought into a purpose, they're bought into a mission, everyone's working to the same vision, and values are completely aligned between the franchisor and the franchisee businesses, then you're onto a winner. And then the only other piece of that puzzle for me is a model that's about support and collaboration rather than management, control, and fear.
Mm. So are franchisers still trying to manage when they should be partnering?
It's not the same in all cases, but I think it happens a lot of the time. And if I had to probably give my opinion on why, I think it's easier to default to control. So it's easier to do that. Um, but ultimately, franchisor, franchisee, it's not a manager and employee relationship. It's a business and business relationship. It's a partnership, and that's a very different thing. And I think if you look at what happens a lot of the time in franchisors, the people that end up on the ground leading the franchise model and leading the franchisees have come up through the ranks of the franchisor. So very often they've not experienced the franchise part of it. And it's not their fault. They deserve to be in those positions because they've earned it. But where it probably goes wrong is when the franchisor doesn't provide support and development in a more sort of coaching leadership role rather than a management tell role. Because what the outcome you get then is you end up with franchisees that feel supported and invested in. But ultimately, how can the people that are doing the doing on the franchisor side be able to do that if they've not been developed, supported, and invested in? So I think it kind of goes round that way.
I see.
I guess question for you on that. I mean, you've spent a lot of time in franchise longer than me. When have you seen it done really well?
Um, I think we are probably at our best when I felt that mutual respect from both the franchisor and the franchisee. For me, that was like marriage made in heaven, this mutual respect. They recognize as a franchisee, they personally have invested their own saving and cash into the business. And where our voice and opinion was like listened to, that's where I felt we were at our best. And um where the franchisor really champion our needs and requirement internally, fight our corner, that's when I seen where it was at its best.
Hmm.
So, a lot of the franchisee entrepreneurs in a box, does it actually work? Does it actually work, Steve?
It can work. I guess a lot of this comes down to the franchisees because ultimately the very best franchisees that I've seen, yeah, they're entrepreneurial, but they're also very, very structured as well. And that's really important because ultimately in any franchise model, all the units and all the businesses, they've got to look and feel the same because otherwise the brand is kind of lost. And when the culture is aligned between franchisor and franchisee, I think that's when that can really happen. For me, I think there's a big opportunity to almost sort of flip the question and flip the way that it works because I think if franchisors were to tap into some of that entrepreneurship that exists within their franchisees, but at a higher level, they get real benefit from that entrepreneurial input and those ideas on a more strategic level rather than, entrepreneurs trying to do things on a local level. Because ultimately, if the cultures aren't aligned and franchisees aren't bought into that why of the franchisor, then it's a pretty dicey situation. And then what tends to happen is everything just becomes about profit on the franchisee's side. And then that's the where things can go really wrong because corners can be cut, things can be done probably not in the way that the franchisor wants it, and that's where it can become really brand damaging. So I guess short answer, yeah, it can be, but again, it goes back to that culture being aligned.
Mm. So, franchisee aren't always one team, should they be?
In my mind, yes, because I think there's far more power in collaboration than there is in competition. Um, a lot of the time it's again the easiest thing or the common sense thing to do is to create league tables. So if you've got 10 franchisees, have them competing against each other, right? But actually wrong, that doesn't work because what it does, if you've got that competitive mindset, then actually you're trying to outdo each other. If you've got a really great idea or something that's going to work, there's probably a high probability it will be kept to themselves. Whereas if it's about collaboration and it's about collective growth and it's about growth of the channel as a whole rather than independent individual businesses, then actually why wouldn't people share what's working? Why wouldn't people be open to asking other people about what what they're doing to get results? And also there's a little bit of self accountability in that model because if everybody's in it together and everybody's measured and contributing to that brand and what that brand can be, then it's a case of you win together or you fail together. So I think it can be done. And then what that does, it stops all this stuff like purely local level, which makes a big difference.
Mm.
And again, just from your experience, I guess I'm curious, what would you say is a key element in getting a franchise network to operate a bit more like a unified team?
I think it's very common for everybody to work in a silo fashion. Everybody's got their own area, their patch. They basically don't want other people to see what you're doing. Um, I think everybody should be working towards a one team. It is a one team. The franchisor, franchisee is one brand. Um, I feel it needs to be instigated by the franchisor. So it is not a competition. It is okay for you all to win together. And a phrase that come to my mind, if anybody still have doubts about not working together, because I'm all for collaborative. If we wasn't, me and you won't be doing this right now. There's a very famous quote is, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, we go together. And that's how I see it. We need to do things together, and we are one team, the franchisee and the franchisor. Um, how do we help great franchisees, Steve?
So, I think the franchisees that they've got all the operational support they need because franchisors are brilliant at that. They've created it all. So, the operational support is already there. What's maybe not there all the time is the leadership part within franchise businesses because, often a franchisee has started with one unit and then they've scaled rapidly. Particularly the really, really successful ones. And as you scale, actually the leadership element within the business is very, very different. So, and it's not always possible for the franchisor to provide that level of support to all their franchisees. So that's kind of where we come in with it. And I think the other part to focus on is is actually the biggest part for us is that relationship because as we said at the start, we've seen it and experienced it when it's has turned a bit sour. So being able to work with great franchisees to help them to understand the franchisor side and to help them to leverage the relationship the best they can, then I think every franchisee wins in that model.
Mm.
And I guess there's one bit I haven't talked about, which is the is the strengths element. So I know you love that. So what would you add around Clifton's strengths to what I've said there?
Well, I would say Clifton's strength actually save our team. It was quite tough towards the end. I was managing a declined business for the last 2 years where we knew our business wasn't growing, it was on a decline. And it's a very tough thing as a business leader. You're going to take your team through that challenge when, quite frankly, there were no future for anyone. And what I meant by Clifton Strength Save Our team is um, I actually had I took the team on a way do and we had a Clifton Strength team building day. And through that day, we really understood each other. We literally like peeled the mask back. You know, what is it you're naturally good at? What is it, and how we can work together as a team. And after having all those feedback, we weren't almost like not afraid of anything. And it was a hell of a challenge we had. But, I held my team together. Everyone stuck by me right till the end. And it's all because of Clifton Strength. It's all because we understand each other. And we also had a goal towards the end, which is let's exit the business successfully together. And and we did that. And that was all down to a strength-based feedback model.
Hmm. Love that.
Mm. What about the franchisor? How do we help great franchisors?
Yeah, well, look, I think if the franchisee's got a tough job, I think the franchisor's got an even tougher job because, they're managing multiple different businesses. They're leading different businesses and it's complex. And the reality of franchising today is most of the good franchise models you look at are growing rapidly as well. So you think rapid scaling, added complexity, multiple people, it's the franchisees' challenges amplified. So I think the main way that we help them is focusing on the relationship and how they can leverage the most out of the relationship with their franchisees. Because, as I said earlier, the processes, the policies, and the brand standards are all in place. But where we can really add value is the people that are the actual touch points with franchisees, spending some time with them, helping them to develop a coaching based leadership approach will really get the best out of the franchisee network and will leave those franchisees feeling aligned, supported, and really bought into what everybody's trying to achieve. And for me, I think that's a massive impact and a massive win for franchisors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I guess again, the bit I haven't touched on too much is the strengths element. So how do you see that fitting in for franchisors?
I think what I find quite interesting with the Clifton Strength and kind of like where we could help both the franchisor and franchisees, we are unbiased. We are completely neutral, but we can actually see things from both perspectives. And what's interesting and what's great about the Clifton Strength model is we focus on what's right with people, not what's wrong with people. Most feedback model, most performance feedback model is, you are not good at something. What's great about the Clifton Strength is it's we want to identify and we want to celebrate what's great about you, what you're naturally good at. And I actually think as well as, as well as work, it's actually really a feel good exercise to understand yourself better and how your own wires are wired and how you do things differently and how you can actually bring everybody's strength together and work collaborative as a team. So I think it's great to help people to see difference is actually good.
Absolutely.
So finally, what's the one bold move that could change everything in franchising?
I think I'd go back to that culture question because for me it's absolutely pivotal in everything. And I think it's if franchisors can franchise their why to their franchisees, then everyone's on for a winner. So I think that would be my big one. And then I guess linked to that is that, you know, coaching approach to leadership and how people in the franchisor business lead their franchisees through a coaching based approach that will engage them. And as I say, if everyone's bought into the same culture, aiming at the same vision, shares the same values, and there's that coaching approach to it, for me, everyone's a winner.
Mm.
I guess that kind of gives an opportunity to probably flip that one back to you a little bit. So again, hindsight is kind of where we started. Hindsight's a great gift, isn't it? But if you could go back and have your time again in franchise, what would be the one bold thing that you would have done differently?
I think what's interesting is I was actually working for I'm actually a ex-corporate. I worked for the franchisor for almost 20 years of my corporate career. So one of the reasons I was appointed to run the business is because I came from that world. And and after I joined our franchisee business, um, really is to, for me, is understanding the franchisor culture even more. You got to almost like look, feel, sleep like them. And you got to be an extension part of that franchise brand culture and value. And then once you've managed to almost like replicate that, then then I do feel that you are one franchisor franchisee brand where you truly, truly think of it all the time.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you very much. Well, that's the end of our podcast. So this is just one snippet of our story. Um, like I said, franchising a logo is easy. Franchising trust, that's what we're here to fix. If you want to find out more, contact either Steve or myself. Bye.
Bye.